In January 2022, the highway code in Great Britain was updated, and one of the most significant updates was that you should give way to pedestrians who are waiting to cross the road at a junction. But this isn't always the safest thing you can do, to the point where you could fail your driving test for it. So in this video, I'm going to explain when you should be giving way and how they mark it on the driving test in Great Britain. I've already done a video going into detail about the rule changes to the highway code in 2022. I'll leave a link to it up there. This video is focusing on pedestrians waiting to cross the road at junctions, which is mentioned in rules H2 and 170 of the new highway code. Here is a note from the driving test centre which tells me how they're marking the driving test in regards to pedestrians waiting to cross the road at junctions following the update to the highway code. I'm not going to read through the whole thing, but I will leave it in the description for you if you want to read through it. I'm just going to go through the main points. First one, we won't be changing the assessment level of a serious or dangerous fault with the introduction of this new rule. So, if it wasn't a serious or dangerous before the update to the highway code, it's not a serious or dangerous now after the update to the highway code. They're not going to change when they mark serious or dangerous for when it comes to giving way to pedestrians waiting to cross the road at junctions. But they have changed when they give a minor mark. On a driving or riding test, failure to give way to someone who is clearly waiting to cross the road but is standing safely on the pavement would normally be assessed as a driving or riding fault. To everyone else, driving or riding fault simply means minor. You cannot fail for one minor, but if you get more than 15, you will fail. So, although it wouldn't be a fail in itself, it could be the straw that breaks the camel's back if you got enough faults. But it does say normally be a minor mark, not necessarily. The driving examiners are also taking into account other factors. Here we are, the presence of following traffic. So, were there cars close behind you when you stopped? Was it safe to give way? The speed on approach to a junction. How fast was the junction? Some junctions are like stopped. Some are 3 or 4 miles an hour. Some are 20 plus miles an hour. How fast were you going? Was it safe to stop and give way? Visibility and actions of the person waiting to cross. So were they safely waiting to cross and checking? Or were they looking at their phone, walking towards the road, and it looked like they were going to walk in front of you? If it looked like they were going to walk in front of you, give way. That's the same before the update to the highway code and after. You want to avoid running pedestrians over. Whether it was clear the person intended to cross. So was the person standing at the side of the road? It really was obvious that they were intending to cross. They were checking left and right. Or were they walking along the pavement and then suddenly turned and gave you no warning? Obviously, you need warning. If they do that, then we don't expect you to slam the brakes on. The driving examiners are also considering things like what they might have done in the same circumstances if they were driving. So they're going to be thinking, would I have given way? Now I'm going to give you some examples of when I would and I would not give way to pedestrians waiting across the road at junctions. Here is a good example of where it is safe to give way. I'm not travelling at speed and I feel safe stopping here, but just me being here is making them rush. Here is another good example of where it is safe to give way. I have to slow down to a low speed for this junction anyway, and it's clear that the pedestrians want to cross. This is an excellent example of where to give way. This pedestrian, who goes out of view from the camera momentarily, didn't even check behind them to see if a car is coming. And if a pedestrian is about to walk across your path and they haven't looked at you, make sure you give way. Another good example of where it is safe to give way, I'm already slowing down towards the end of the road, so coming to a complete stop to allow the pedestrian to cross doesn't pose any extra danger. I'm giving way to this mobility scooter because I have to slow down for the junction anyway and I feel safe stopping in this road. However, on this occasion, they wave me through. In this situation, I recommend going and not getting into that stagnation where you're going, you go first. No, after you. No, after you. No, you go first. You don't need to give way when the pedestrian is waiting to cross a road near a junction. Like here, you are supposed to give way to a pedestrian who is waiting to cross the road into which or from which you are turning. If the pedestrian is not waiting to cross, then you don't need to wait for them. For example, here, the pedestrian is walking around the bend. There is no need to wait for this pedestrian as it's clear they are not going to cross. And they're not even going to notice that I am waiting for them. She is waiting for me whilst she is looking at her phone. If a pedestrian is already crossing the road, make sure you give way and allow them time to finish without rushing them. I'm not giving way here as there are 2 lanes of cars behind me. The car directly behind me is close, and stopping here is not what the majority of traffic is expecting, and everyone in front of me and behind me are accelerating to leave the junction. I'm not giving way here because there are 2 lanes behind me, and even if I stop, the vehicle in the lane next to me may not also stop, so I may end up putting the pedestrians under pressure to cross in front of a moving lane. I'm not going to give way here not only because it's a busy multi-lane roundabout, but the pedestrian is waiting on the other side of the island. At first, I am not waiting for the cyclist on the pavement as there is an island and the position of their bike tells me they are not about to cross just yet. But even though they go off camera and I'm not looking directly at them, I can still see them peripherally and I'm still keeping some of my attention on them. Then they decide not to cross the road but to start cycling in the road at the mini roundabout. Even though I'm not going fast here, I'm not going to give way because the car behind me is accelerating to take their opportunity at the roundabout. I can see the pedestrians are waiting, so I know it's safe to continue. But if I stop, I'm putting myself at risk of being hit from behind. I am giving way here as I can do so without stopping mid-roundabout. The roundabout is small enough that I can give way to the exit before I even enter it. So I'm not really increasing my chances of being hit from behind. If there is no traffic, most drivers don't expect you to stop mid-roundabout because someone is waiting to cross the road. Therefore, doing so puts you at risk. It's important not to wave your arms and flash your lights at pedestrians who you are giving way to cross the road because that puts them under pressure and there could be someone coming the other way or someone overtaking you like a motorbike or a cyclist, and you don't want to pressurize pedestrians to walk into the road. Whether or not you get a minor on the driving test for failing to give way to a pedestrian waiting to cross the road at a junction comes down to the judgment of the examiner. If they felt that it was safe to give way and you don't, then you're likely going to get a minor. If they felt that it was unsafe to give way and you continued through, then you probably won't get a minor. They agree with you. They thought, no, that wasn't safe to give way there. But also on the other side of things, if you gave way and they felt it was unsafe and you gave way in an unsafe way, that could be a minor mark. That could even be a serious mark. So you could fail for that. I'm now going to give you an example which I believe demonstrates why giving way to pedestrians who are waiting to cross the road at all junctions isn't the safest thing to do. So I'm turning right at this junction, which is traffic light controlled. The highway code says I should give way to pedestrians waiting to cross the road at junctions, but I have a green light and the pedestrian has a red light. So should I give way to them and encourage them to ignore their red light? No, I shouldn't. Not going when the traffic light is green and it's safe to proceed would normally be a test fail. So in my opinion, this new rule is not fit for purpose. You could say the highway code is in conflict with the highway code. One part of the highway code tells pedestrians do not cross when they have a red light at a traffic light controlled junction or a pedestrian crossing at traffic lights. Whereas another part of the highway code says that drivers should give way to pedestrians waiting to cross the road at junctions. Most traffic lights are junctions, so using the word junction in the highway code, well, it's too broad. I believe they've always meant T-junction, but they haven't specified it. Because if you stop to give way to pedestrians who are waiting to cross the road as you're leaving a high-speed roundabout, particularly with multiple lanes, you are increasing danger, significantly I would say, and many people do agree. And when you're at traffic lights, it's best to follow the traffic lights, because if you don't, things get dangerous pretty quickly. Then there is the issue for people who are partially sighted, blind, or who use guide dogs. Some people believe that if a car stops, the guide dog isn't going to walk in front of the car. That's not true. Guide dogs do use zebra crossings and traffic light controlled pedestrian crossings, so they can tell the difference between a moving vehicle and a stationary vehicle. The problem occurs when the person is trying to cross the road and they can hear the car stop and they're thinking, has that car stopped for me or for something else? And the sound of the car or different vehicle could be a loud truck with a diesel engine going clug, 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 clug. Hard to hear over it to hear if somebody else is coming. It's much easier for that car just to go past, or any kind of vehicle go past, and they can hear it's quiet now, it's safe to cross. Instead of trying to guess, has the vehicle stopped for me? Is it a dustbin truck who keeps stopping and starting? And trying to hear over the sound of the engine. I also believe we are creating an issue. This pedestrian waits for me and I wait for her. By the time she realises that I'm waiting, I could have already been out of her way. Now there are eyes on her, so she feels pressured to rush across the road, and rushing leads to mistakes. I decided to give way here because it felt safe for me to stop, but in hindsight it may look like I'm giving way to the silver car. Of course the car should wait, but many drivers don't, and I worry that my actions could result in the silver car and the pedestrian feeling pressured to go at the same time. Well, I hope you found this video interesting and it helps. If you have, please give it a thumbs up, and if you're looking for car insurance, check out the links to Collingwood and Confused in the description. If you're learning to drive and want to insure yourself on somebody else's car, then Collingwood are there for you, because you can do so without affecting the owner's policy, which takes away a big stress from the owner of that car that you're using to learn to drive in. Via the link, there's up to 35% off and a £20 Amazon gift card. If you want to insure your own car, check out the link to confused.com, because you fill out one quote form and get loads of quotes back from many insurers to compare who's cheapest, and you can change your car on that quote as many times as you like, which is a useful tool when you're trying to figure out how much it costs to insure different cars, because you can do so without having to fill out the whole quote form. You can just change the car. Using the links doesn't cost you anything, but it does support the channel, so thank you very much. Subscribe to get my future videos, and until the next one, cheerio.